June 7, 1981. 6:35 p.m. Iraqi airspace. 8 F-16 fighter jets scream across the desert at 600 miles per hour, flying so low they kick up sand clouds. 6 F-15 escorts maintain a protective umbrella above. They've been airborne for over an hour, burning fuel at an alarming rate, pushing the aircraft to their operational limits. This is farther than the Israeli Air Force has ever flown for a strike mission. Their target, Saddam Hussein's nuclear reactor, 18 months away from producing plutonium for Iraq's atomic bomb. The reactor appears on the horizon, a massive concrete dome rising from the flat landscape southeast of Baghdad. Inside that dome sits the Osirak facility, the crown jewel of Saddam's nuclear ambitions, the machinery that would give him the power to destroy entire cities. The lead pilot, Colonel Zayev Raz, breaks radio silence for the first time since takeoff. All aircraft assume attack formation. The jets climb sharply to 7,000 feet, then roll into their bombing runs. Each F-16 carries 2 Mark 84 bombs, 2,000 pounds of high explosive designed to penetrate reinforced concrete. At precisely 6:35 and 30 seconds, the first bombs release. Then the second pair, then the third. In exactly 90 seconds, all 16 bombs fall toward the reactor in a perfectly choreographed sequence. The pilots have practiced this moment hundreds of times in the Negev desert, bombing a full-scale mock-up of Osirak built from intelligence photographs. The explosions are catastrophic. The reactor dome collapses inward. Secondary blasts tear through the facility as cooling systems rupture. 10 Iraqi soldiers manning anti-aircraft positions are killed instantly. One French technician, working overtime on a Sunday, dies in the rubble. But the reactor core, the heart of Iraq's nuclear ambitions, is completely destroyed. Not a single surface-to-air missile is fired. Not one Iraqi interceptor takes off. The entire Iraqi air defense system, designed by the Soviets and costing billions, never even detects the strike package until the bombs are already falling. By 6:37 p.m., it's over. The Israeli jets turn west and race for home, flying even lower now, fuel gauges approaching critical. They still have 600 miles to fly back to Israeli airspace, and several pilots calculate they have less than 5 minutes of reserve fuel. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Menachem Begin sits in his residence with his entire cabinet. He assembled them at 5 p.m. before the strike, but told each minister it was a private meeting. None knew the others were coming. At 7:20 p.m., the red phone rings. Chief of Staff Rafael Eitan speaks 3 words. All returned safely. Begin stands and announces, "Gentlemen, the Iraqi nuclear reactor no longer exists." This is the story of Operation Opera, the mission that established the Begin Doctrine and changed the calculus of nuclear spread forever. But the real story isn't just about those 90 seconds over Baghdad. It's about the 3 years of sabotage, assassination, and intelligence operations that came before. The secret war that Mossad fought in the shadows, while the politicians debated and the pilots trained. The invisible campaign that bought Israel the time it needed to launch the impossible strike. The story begins not in 1981, but in 1976, when Iraq signed a deal with France that sent shockwaves through Israeli intelligence. Jacques Chirac, then French Prime Minister, personally negotiated the sale of an Osiris-class nuclear reactor to Saddam Hussein. The price, 3 billion francs, paid in oil. The French called it Osirak, combining Osiris with Iraq. Saddam renamed it Tammuz I, and the name itself was a message. Tammuz is the month in the Babylonian calendar when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple in Jerusalem. This wasn't subtle. This was Saddam telling Israel exactly what he planned to do with his new toy. On paper, the reactor was for peaceful research. Iraq claimed it needed nuclear technology for medical isotopes and scientific advancement, but Mossad's analysts in Tel Aviv saw through the deception immediately. Iraq sits on the world's 6th largest oil reserves. They have enough petroleum to power their country for centuries. They didn't need nuclear energy. They wanted nuclear weapons, The technical specifications confirmed Israel's worst fears. The Osirak reactor was a 70-megawatt light water reactor, far more powerful than needed for research. It used weapons-grade uranium as fuel, enriched to 93%. Most critically, it was designed to produce plutonium as a byproduct, approximately 10 kilograms per year. That's enough for 2 Nagasaki-type bombs annually. By 1978, Israeli intelligence intercepted communications between Iraqi nuclear scientists and their military commanders. One document, obtained by a Mossad asset inside Iraq's Atomic Energy Commission, stated the goal explicitly: to acquire nuclear weapons capability to destroy the Zionist entity. The timeline was even more alarming. Construction at the Al-Tuwaitha Nuclear Research Center, 18 kilometers southeast of Baghdad, was proceeding ahead of schedule. French technicians worked alongside Iraqi engineers, training them in reactor operations. Italy provided hot cells for plutonium separation. Brazil offered uranium supplies. Iraq was assembling a complete nuclear weapons infrastructure. Mossad's assessment, delivered to Prime Minister Begin in late 1979, was stark. If nothing was done, Iraq would have enough plutonium for its first bomb by late 1981, operational weapons by 1982 or 1983. In 5 years, they projected, Iraq would have a small arsenal. For Begin, this wasn't just another intelligence briefing. This was personal. He was a Holocaust survivor who lost most of his family in Nazi death camps. His parents were murdered in Brest-Litovsk. When he looked at the aerial photographs of Osirak, he didn't see a reactor. He saw gas chambers. He told his cabinet, "Never again will the Jewish people be threatened with annihilation while I am Prime Minister." But destroying Osirak wouldn't be simple. It was surrounded by Soviet-supplied SAM-6 and SAM-7 missile batteries. The Iraqi Air Force had 350 combat aircraft. The facility itself was built to withstand attack, with reinforced concrete walls and the reactor core housed deep inside the structure. Any strike would have to be perfect. Worse, the political situation was delicate. Israel had just signed the Camp David Accords with Egypt. Peace with the largest Arab nation was fragile. An attack on another Arab state could shatter that peace, unite the Arab world against Israel, and destroy the relationship with the United States that Israel depended on for survival. So Israel tried diplomacy first. Foreign Minister Moshe Dayan flew secretly to Paris in 1979, meeting with French officials, pleading with them to cancel the reactor sale or at least substitute low-enriched fuel that couldn't produce weapons-grade plutonium. The French refused. They had oil contracts to protect. Israel appealed to the Americans. But the Carter administration, focused on the Iranian hostage crisis and Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, showed little interest. One State Department official told his Israeli counterpart, "We don't believe Iraq will actually build nuclear weapons, and even if they do, it's not America's problem." By early 1980, Begin realized that if Israel wanted to stop Iraq's nuclear program, Israel would have to do it alone. But before the Air Force could strike, Mossad would fight a different kind of war, one fought with explosives and bullets in the shadows of European cities. On April 6, 1979, at 3 a.m., a series of explosions rocked the port of La Seine-sur-Mer near Toulon in southern France. The blasts were so powerful that windows shattered 5 blocks away. When fire crews arrived, they found a scene of devastation. The warehouses of CNIM, the French company building the reactor cores for Osirak, were in ruins. Inside those warehouses had been the heart of Iraq's nuclear program. 2 reactor cores, specially designed vessels that would contain the nuclear fuel and control the chain reaction. Both were completely destroyed. Millions of dollars of precision engineering turned into twisted metal. Iraq's nuclear timeline had just been pushed back by at least 6 months. The next morning, French newspapers received a statement from a previously unknown organization called the French Ecological Group, claiming responsibility. They opposed nuclear spread to dictatorships. They promised more attacks if France continued the sale. French intelligence found the bombing professional, the explosive placement expert, the escape route clean. This wasn't the work of environmental activists. This was Mossad. But Mossad wasn't finished. They identified a critical weakness in Iraq's program: the human expertise. Iraq had the money and the equipment, but they lacked the scientists who truly understood nuclear physics. One man was essential to bridging that gap: Dr. Yahya El-Meshad. El-Meshad was an Egyptian nuclear physicist, educated in the Soviet Union, who had been recruited by Iraq to supervise the Osirak project. He shuttled between Baghdad and Paris, coordinating with French technicians, ensuring the Iraqis understood the technology they were buying. Israeli intelligence marked him as irreplaceable. Without him, Iraq's nuclear program would lose years. On June 13, 1980, El-Meshad checked into room 941 at the Méridien Hotel in Paris. He had just returned from inspecting the rebuilt reactor cores, the replacements for those destroyed in the port bombing. At 7:30 p.m., he ordered dinner from room service. He never ate it. Hotel staff found his body the next morning. His throat had been cut with surgical precision. The room showed no signs of struggle. His papers were scattered, but nothing was taken. The killer had picked the lock, entered silently, killed him instantly, and vanished. Professional, clinical, efficient. But the operation had a witness. Marie-Claude Magal, a prostitute, told police she had been with El-Meshad earlier that evening. She had seen another man in the hallway, someone who didn't belong. Before police could interview her again, she was struck by a car on a Paris street. The driver was never found. The witness was dead. The case went cold. Mossad's sabotage campaign extended beyond violence. They infiltrated the French companies working on Osirak. Using a combination of blackmail, bribery, and ideological recruitment, they turned French technicians into assets. These insiders provided blueprints, photographs, and critically, they introduced subtle flaws into equipment bound for Iraq. One Mossad operation involved recruiting a French engineer deep in debt from gambling losses. In exchange for 500,000 francs, he provided complete technical specifications of the reactor's control systems. More importantly, he installed modified control rods that would fail after 6 months of operation, causing a reactor shutdown that would take months to diagnose and fix. Another operation targeted the Italian company Snaia Techend, which was providing the hot cells Iraq needed to extract plutonium from spent fuel. Mossad agents posing as South African businessmen approached Italian engineers, offering triple salaries to work on a peaceful reactor project in Pretoria. 5 key engineers accepted, leaving Iraq's hot cell construction without critical expertise. The project fell 18 months behind schedule. But despite these successes, Mossad faced a harsh reality. They were delaying Iraq's nuclear program, not stopping it. Saddam had unlimited oil money. Every destroyed component was rebuilt. Every dead scientist was replaced. The French, eager for petroleum, continued shipping equipment. By October 1980, Israeli intelligence delivered devastating news. The reactor would be fueled and go hot by July 1981. Once the reactor became operational with nuclear fuel inside, bombing it would release radioactive material into the atmosphere. The fallout could contaminate Baghdad, killing thousands of civilians. The window for military action was closing fast. The shadow war had bought time, but time was running out. Inside Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv, the debate was fierce. Some argued for escalating the sabotage campaign. Perhaps they could destroy the reactor cores again during shipping, maybe assassinate more scientists. But others recognized the truth. Covert operations had reached their limit. If Israel wanted to stop Osirak, it would take something bigger, something unprecedented, something impossible. On October 14, 1980, Begin convened the most classified cabinet meeting in Israel's history. The agenda had one item: should Israel bomb the Iraqi nuclear reactor? The debate that followed would fracture the government and nearly topple the prime minister. Defense Minister Ezer Weizman led the opposition. a former commander of the Israeli Air Force, the architect of Israel's victory in the Six-Day War, Weizmann understood military operations better than anyone in the room. His assessment was brutal. "This is madness. Our pilots will have to fly 2,200 kilometers round trip over hostile territory. They've never flown half that distance. The F-16s have been in our inventory for only a year." Deputy Prime Minister Yigael Yadin raised another concern. "Even if we succeed, what then? We'll unite the entire Arab world against us. Egypt will tear up the peace treaty. The Saudis will embargo oil to any nation that supports us." But Begin had his supporters. Ariel Sharon argued forcefully. "The Arabs already want to destroy us. Now they want nuclear weapons to finish the job. We can debate this until the mushroom cloud rises over Tel Aviv, or we can act." Chief of Staff Raphael Eitan was even more blunt. "Every day we wait, Saddam gets closer to the bomb. Once the Iraqis have operational knowledge, even if we destroy this reactor, they'll build another." The most emotional argument came from Yitzhak Shamir. When Hitler announced he would exterminate the Jews, the world didn't believe him. When Saddam says he'll incinerate half of Israel, we must believe him. The difference between us and our grandparents in Europe is that we have F-16s. The cabinet voted 10 in favor, 6 against. Begin knew that if the operation failed, his government would collapse. But there was another factor. Israeli elections were scheduled for June 1981. If Labor won, Shimon Peres would cancel the operation. Begin calculated he had a narrow window. By December 1980, Begin made his final decision. Israel would act alone. He told the military chiefs, "Prepare the operation. We strike before the reactor goes hot." The Israeli Air Force faced an unprecedented challenge. The strike package would have to fly 1,100 kilometers each way, at the absolute limit of the F-16's range. They would have no mid-air refueling. If they encountered any serious opposition, they wouldn't have enough fuel to get home. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Iran's failed attack on Osirak. On September 30th, 1980, 8 Iranian F-4 Phantoms had struck the reactor but caused only minor damage. The raid was a tactical failure, but for Israeli intelligence, it was a goldmine of information. Through channels that remain classified to this day, Mossad obtained the Iranian reconnaissance photos taken during the raid. But more importantly, they acquired something even more valuable: a complete map of Iraqi radar coverage and air defense positions, compiled by Iranian intelligence from their attack. The Iranians had discovered gaps in the Iraqi radar network, blind spots where low-flying aircraft could penetrate undetected. Israeli planners studied this intelligence intensively. They discovered that Iraq had reinforced their eastern defenses after the Iranian attack, but had left their western approaches relatively unchanged. The Iraqis couldn't imagine Israel would attempt what Iran had failed to accomplish. This arrogance became their vulnerability. Using the Iranian data, combined with their own intelligence, Israeli planners constructed a flight path that was virtually invisible to radar. The route would take them through a narrow corridor over Saudi Arabia, where radar coverage overlapped poorly, creating a blind zone approximately 20 kilometers wide. Flying at 100 feet altitude through this corridor, they could reach Iraq undetected. The fuel problem required extraordinary measures. Engineers developed special external fuel tanks with small fins attached to their inner surfaces, improving aerodynamic efficiency by 3%. It doesn't sound like much, but over 2,200 kilometers, it meant the difference between landing safely and crashing in the desert. To practice the extreme fuel management required, pilots flew a training route from Etzion Air Base near Eilat to the Greek island of Rhodes and back. This route, nicknamed the Tel Aviv-Rome Express by the pilots, matched the exact distance and fuel consumption profile of the Osirak mission. They flew it dozens of times, learning to manage throttles with microscopic precision. But the most audacious innovation happened on the ground. To maximize fuel capacity, technicians developed a procedure for hot refueling. topping off the fuel tanks with the engines running just seconds before takeoff. This was extraordinarily dangerous. One spark could destroy the aircraft and kill everyone nearby, but it saved the fuel that would normally be burned during engine start and taxi, adding precious miles to their range. The bombing sequence itself required split-second timing. The 8 F-16s would attack in rapid succession, each diving at precisely 5-second intervals. The first 2 aircraft would drop their bombs on the dome's apex to crack it open. The next 4 would aim through the breach to destroy the reactor core inside. The final 2 would target the supporting structures to ensure complete collapse. This sequencing was critical. If the timing was off by even seconds, later bombs might hit debris clouds instead of targets. Colonel Zaev Raz drilled his pilots relentlessly on this sequence. In the Negev desert, they bombed their replica Osirak hundreds of times, adjusting their timing until it became muscle memory. Each pilot knew exactly when to roll, when to dive, when to release. 5 seconds between each aircraft. No margin for error. The mission was set for June 7th, a Sunday, when French technicians would be off duty. At 4:00 p.m., 14 pilots gathered for their final briefing at Etzion Air Base. General David Ivry spoke last. The reactor must be destroyed. Israel's survival depends on it. June 7th, 1981. 4:40 p.m. Etzion Air Base. Engines roar to life as ground crews perform hot refueling, pumping jet fuel into the F-16s with engines running at idle. The procedure is so dangerous that fire trucks are positioned with hoses ready, crews standing by in silver heat suits. Every second counts. This extra fuel might make the difference between reaching home or ejecting over the desert. At 4:45 p.m., Colonel Raz releases his brakes. His F-16, loaded with 10,600 pounds of fuel and 4,000 pounds of bombs, lumbers down the runway. Behind him, 13 more jets follow. They form up heading east, dropping immediately to wave-top height over the Gulf of Aqaba. The formation is so tight they appear as a single radar return. Over Jordan, they're briefly detected but tagged as a commercial airliner. Over Saudi Arabia, they thread through the radar gap identified by Iranian intelligence, invisible to the billion-dollar defense network below. At 6:33 p.m., Osirak appears exactly as photographed. Raz calls, "Assume attack formation." The F-15s climb to provide cover while the F-16s accelerate toward their initial point. At 6:35:30, Raz rolls inverted and pulls into his dive. 7,000 feet, 6,000, 5,000. The dome grows huge in his bomb sight. He releases at 3,500 feet, feels the aircraft jump as 4,000 pounds of ordnance drops away. His bombs impact dead center. Exactly 5 seconds later, the second F-16 releases, its bombs following through the hole Raz just created. 5 seconds. Third aircraft. 5 seconds. Fourth aircraft. The precision is devastating. Each pilot hits their exact aim point, the bombs penetrating deeper into the reactor's heart with each successive strike. By the time the 8th F-16 pulls out of its dive, the entire structure is collapsing. The F-15s above record everything. Their cameras capture the defining image, a massive column of white smoke rising from the destroyed reactor. The white color confirms the reactor core has been breached and destroyed. Mission accomplished. Iraqi anti-aircraft fire erupts, but it's too late. The Israeli jets are already racing west at 50 feet altitude. Several pilots watch their fuel gauges hover at 0. They've calculated they have 4 minutes of reserve fuel, if they've calculated correctly. At 7:29 p.m., all 14 aircraft land at Etzion. One F-16 flames out on the runway, its engines dying as it rolls to a stop. The pilot had 90 seconds of fuel remaining. That evening, Begin addresses the world. The atomic bombs which that reactor was capable of producing would have been of the Hiroshima type. Thus, a mortal danger to the people of Israel progressively arose. International condemnation is universal. But in 1991, Dick Cheney will thank Israel. Coalition forces in Desert Storm didn't face a nuclear-armed Iraq because of those 90 seconds over Baghdad. The Begin Doctrine is born. Israel will never allow enemies to obtain nuclear weapons. Operation Opera proved that with enough intelligence, enough courage, and enough precision, even the impossible becomes possible.